Welcome back to the 3F podcast. As always, your host, Timothy Clayton Cornell. And with me today, I have Michael and Garen. How's it going, guys?
Good, TJ.
Yeah, JJ, how you doing, mate?
So before we get started, I have to do my thing that I do every episode. Is anyone drinking anything special? I'm still working on tagging Zevia in every episode, and I have gotten nowhere with getting them as a sponsor, but I'm drinking my weekly Zevia.
Nice plug, TJ.
Mine is an Australian red wine, so yeah, that's what I'm drinking at the moment.
How can we get them to sponsor a rugby club? That's going to be a great way.
Well, yeah, as long as it's not that one that's forget the name of it.
The kangaroo one?
Yeah, I forget the name of it. Like everyone talks about like how good it is. Like we use it down there to take rust off steel.
Oh, I will remember that. And look at us opening the episode with some knowledge. Everyone here in America.
It's not the most nicest of regs for Australians down there.
Oh, well, so before we get started, I do want to thank our show sponsors, Michael and Huckle. Obviously, thank you so much. From the Carolina Storm side with Garen, Isagenix, and Rugby Department as well. Thank you to our sponsors. So, Michael, we've had you on before multiple times. You are the CEO of Huckle. We've talked about you with Trey, but you're also running another brand called Three Big Wheels. And that's one of the big things we want to cover today is some things on athlete branding. And Garen, because we've had Michael on so many times, can you let us know a little bit about yourself and like your ownership?
Yeah, so I've been here in the United States since 2015. Kind of just filtered my way through a few different professions. You know, I got an IT background, and but you know, known mostly for my professional sports as a rugby league player down there in Australia and in the UK. Then it come to about 2019, I decided to start women's rugby league and got that all the way through April last year. We launched, got our, what was it? We played Canada in a test match and got an international ranking. So then, you know, obviously the national governing body chose to go a different direction after that. That's a different story. But all the way along, I saw Carolinas as being an area where specifically there's a lot of talent, but it didn't really get recognised because of its location. You know, Florida is very strong for having more teams readily available, you know, to play competitions. And Carolina was one of those ones where there's a lot of players that they just scattered around. So decided to start Carolina Storm for both men's and women's. And you know, where we're at now is progressing nicely. We're just basically a travel team. We'll go and play tournaments wherever you know we want to try and enter. It doesn't matter whether it's London or you know Hawaii or whatever. We just primarily want to go and play and expose the rugby player to rugby league as well. But most of the times that we know back here in the United States, rugby union is far more well known. It's well known other than rugby league. So that's the primary goal. Develop that, and there's a lot of new things coming on with High Performance Center, and I can touch on them a little bit later. But I think the main thing to move forward with is to partner with good brands, and Huckle was definitely one of those.
Yeah, and obviously we've talked about Huckle's mission before and what all they offer to athletes. So you two are both perfect people to talk about athlete branding today. So Michael, I want to put it back to you. Can you tell us what athlete branding is and what Three Big Wheels has to do with that for athletes?
Sure. So I've been in sports marketing for over 20 years. I've been in charge of branded GoPro, worked at Sony Electronics, but I've always had some form of sports marketing in my background. And in fact, I've even had a few jobs where sports wasn't even really a part of it, and I still somehow brought in sports into the mix. But I'm a marketing person, and one of the things that I realized while working with a bunch of different athletes was how do you parlay what your sport is into other opportunities? And when I say that, it usually means other financial opportunities. So for athletes, they and this is at all different levels, by the way, but athletes have a circle of influence simply because of the fact that they're associated with sports. The number one thing that you can spend on advertising right now is live sports. In fact, it survived the pandemic, and even in the pandemic, it grew 40%.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's one of the reasons is because it was one of the only things you could watch. But sports has this cachet that it allows for marketability. And so when I say athlete branding, and by the way, when I first came out with that and started talking to athletes about athlete branding, a lot of it was just, that's a marketing term, really. The reality is, it means is how do you set yourself up for other opportunities? And that means a number of different things. And how we do it, we have a process in place, which is explore what your interests are. So you like your sport. I'm sure as an athlete, you like working out, you like health. All of those things are naturals, but we're looking for something beyond just that. So do you like travel? Do you like cooking? And all of these things that are your interest sets, in addition to what your sports are, allow for this full sort of 360 ability for an athlete to brand themselves. And so what we look at is, I believe personally, and I think a lot of people could debate this, but I think all people have very incredible stories, right? Like everybody's lives are stories onto themselves. And from an athlete's perspective, if athletes are willing to share what that is, those sort of components in addition to the sport, it becomes this very authentic way for them to market themselves and to work with brands and companies that are aligned with their interest sets. And so that's what we've been doing for over the course of, I left GoPro, I think like 7 years ago. I've been doing it since then. We work with athletes from all the major sports right now, international included in that. And we have this model, and we believe that that model works for athletes at all different stages.
And I know you and Garen and another fellow Storm and Outlaw had this idea to get people together to talk about athlete branding. Why did you guys feel it was so important to hold a symposium through Huckle and parts with the Carolina Storm on athlete branding?
Yeah, so I'll give my answer to that, Garen, and then you can, I know Garen has a lot of ideas on this too, and we're very aligned on this. But, as I mentioned, like the term athlete branding, if I asked 9 out of 10 athletes, they probably would not know what that means. So what we're trying to do is provide a forum, and the symposium was that, which is, let us share with you what it means, first of all. And then let's open that up for dialogue. And what happened was on the symposium, if you remember, when you ever ask a room, like, does anybody have any questions? Nobody raises their hand. And then as soon as somebody raises their hand, then everybody else starts asking questions too. That's what we wanted. We wanted dialogue of like, all right, let's discuss what it means for you as an athlete to earn other opportunities through your branding. And so for me, Garen and I talked, and we're like, let's start getting this out there. The more we can get this out there, and as many formats, including this podcast, the more we can share with athletes that this opportunity is available to them if they explore, their personal interest sets and sort of how they parlay that with their sport.
Yeah, one of the things we spoke about when we first started talking about Huckle and the platform was, there are so many different misguided ideas of like how to brand and things like that. And Michael's 100% when he said, go for your interests and be more kind of natural and let things roll off the tongue. And one of the things that we spoke about was, rather than just like launch something and people just not understanding what it is, let's educate them first. And let's just look at a way of kind of like just breaking down that outer shell, and then get people comfortable with the platform, how they can actually use, different techniques and different opportunities, how to leverage not only a brand, but obviously leverage themselves personally into that space, and then things just kind of just naturally grow. And that's what we wanted to really highlight. And the symposium was good because, as Michael said, it allowed people to really open up. The first question then led to like the 10th question. So it was really good.
Yeah, being a part of it, and I was driving back from having a family visit and just listening, trying to pay attention the best I could. As soon as that first question hit, or, it was probably a minute almost of silence, kind of looking for questions. And then 5-6 questions hit. It's like you said, just as soon as the first person. So, well, one, whenever I was told about Huckle, I never thought as a D3 rugby player and a select side rugby player that plays with the Storm sometimes, I didn't think that there was a space for me as an athlete. And we've talked about in Huckle that there's all these different places for athletes, from bobsledding to cycling to triathletes, whatever it is. There's always this niches that people can use. But and then a step further is, how do we make ourselves marketable? How do we actually put something out there that companies would want to select us for? And so we've talked about that on Huckle before. So Garen, being the owner of a rugby team and founding this development group, how does athletes exposing themselves maybe change your decision or help you make a decision?
I think the good thing, well, firstly, I think the platform it speaks for itself, where I think it's a universal opportunity. So you're not really pigeonholed in one particular area, but for you as an individual, it's unique because only you know your story. So the opportunity, as I said, is universal, because it doesn't matter what area you go to, that same opportunity exists for someone else with their story. So what we're looking at from how we can kind of leverage into this, and how both the player and also like a potential sponsor or a brand can get a lot of benefit from this, is for people to be genuine. Everyone, as Michael said, everyone has their story. Like, I've got a story, you've got a story, and it just how we can actually position that, utilizing the right resources, like a strong platform like what Huckle is. It allows us to kind of align with these brands so that but everyone mutually benefits. I mean, the things from an owner's perspective on how I would look at things is, I think the work that is done on the field is as important as the work that's done off it, and vice versa. Because a player's brand isn't just on how they play. A player's brand is how they act in person, how they, are they a family person? Are they religious, or all these different type of things? Now, everyone's got their own particular views on how they see things, but at the end of the day, something will resonate with a brand. If you're not genuine, they will pick up on that. And that's what they want to just basically work with an individual and work in a particular sense where, okay, I've got X product. This person is from that industry, has that passion. Let's have a conversation. And it is simply as simple as that. And that's the thing that I like about it. You're not. It's kind of like, and no disrespect with the terminology, but it's been dumbed down enough for everyone to simply understand it and say, okay, well, what do I need to do? Like, just create a profile, and let's go from there. We're not asking everyone to do a lot other than that. And I think that the good uptake from our Storm guys has been really strong, because at the end of the day, the goal is to get support, and the support, playing sport over here in the United States is very expensive. I'm fortunate enough to come from like Australia, where our sport down there, I played the number one sport, so we always had that financial support. It's kind of like a basketballer over here, or a baseball player, or things like that, but it's still expensive to buy all that, all the equipment that you need. But travel costs, like these are things that really, I'm working with different brands at the moment to set up these different rebate systems and programs where I don't want players to continually put their hand in their pocket to go and play a sport or to go and play a match. I want to be able to subsidize it or pay for it. That's our common goal, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I would say there's been quite a few rugby tournaments that I would not be able to make it if it wasn't for American Express points. That is how my flight is paid for, and how my hotel has been paid for 2 or 3 nights. And I do want to say, like, this isn't just some like crazy idea of having a presence of your whole life. I'm sure, Garen, you'd recognize this name with Nick Badger coming from, you know, a rugby player who doesn't play anymore, but he is very present on social media. If I remember right, he has over like 400,000 followers, and he's not even a rugby player currently. I believe he's retired from the sport, but all he does is share his life, is share either whether it's funny content, inspiring content, or just his family content. And I think a lot of people are worried that maybe their close friends don't care about that. But as an athlete, people do want to see what they're involved in, and see, and companies, of course, have gone to him, and he's had his sponsorships, and he's a big name. And another one, and hopefully this doesn't detract from any story from you, Michael, but the story of the luggage, someone trying to get a luggage sponsorship.
Yep.
goes a long way of talking about posting, telling companies that I will post that a fact that I travel a lot and I use your brand, and it helps me. And the fact that you are posting something on a regular basis, like Garen said, just making an account and putting stuff out there is going to build your presence and make you more marketable to other potential financial endeavors.
100%. And you know, the one of the things that I think happens when you talk about this whole space is that a lot of people go directly to social, right? Because it's measurable. You know, companies can quickly go and say, okay, how many followers do you have? We're of the mindset that there's a lot of other things that exist just beyond social. So as an example, we're working with a group right now on the platform who has a product. They're called Nirvana, and they do vagus nerve stimulation. And the product itself is it's really about mental health. There's a lot of other health benefits to it, but it's about mental health. So when you have athletes that come on and say, okay, mental health is something which is important to me. Mental health is something that I struggle with, or whatever those points are, where people can come on and be real, there's value in that, right? And so it's not just about the social following. It's about how much does whatever your interest set resonate with that particular company. So I always want to encourage athletes, and you mentioned, TJ, like you didn't know that if, you know, at your level, if you were going to find opportunities. And where I would say on the other side of the fence, there's companies that are saying, I didn't know I would have access to athletes like this. So it is all part of this thing where, as Garen mentioned, it's mutually beneficial. Both parties have something to gain, and these don't have to be, you know, I think a lot of people think when you're talking in the sports space that they're very, very large budget. Sure, if you're doing a commercial with Patrick Mahomes, it's going to be a lot of money. But everybody else, if you go down from there in sort of this like cascade format, the market will determine what the marketability value is, what the marketable value is. And there's still opportunity at all these different levels. So what we're trying to do is say, wherever you're at in your sport, look for other ways to parlay what you're doing into other opportunities. And that's really important, because we work with professional athletes on, you know, the average tenure of an NFL football player is less than 2 years. Less than 2 years. They've played their entire lives playing football, and they played the NFL 1.78 years. And then they're trying to figure out, what do I do now? And so what we're saying is, at that entire journey, and this does not necessarily mean this is just for professionals. This means that anybody in their athletic journey, at any point in that journey, you should be looking for other marketable opportunities, because the fact that you're playing athletics is something which allows you and affords you opportunity that other people don't have.
Yeah, and I don't want to gloss over, you said it's not just professionals. We talked about NIL with Trey and Ty a few weeks ago. So this is for some high school athletes, depending on the state, college athletes, amateur athletes, you know, adult league, and then your national level, and then your professionals, depending on, you know, what league or what they're in, whether it's triathletes, whether it's cross country running, whether it's rock climbing, or anything else. That this is for everyone to look at. This is I'm a D3 rugby player by default, and hopefully that changes as I go on. But that there is something for me to do. There's spaces for me to enter the market with as an athlete. And I do want to say, you can tell we've had you on with Huckle, and then now talking about the Three Big Wheel Symposium. This is something that you're very passionate about, because there is this space for athletes to get exposure, to increase their presence. And with that, what would be a tip if somebody just has an Instagram profile to improve their presence?
Yeah, I think, there's a number of things that you can do. I think where I always start out is show the parts of yourself that are not just your sport. So what tends to happen is a lot of athletes will it will just be about their sport. So everything that they're posting is their sport. Now, granted, a lot of people become very successful by just doing their sport, and people are following them for that. And sure, if that's your model, that's great. I would encourage people who are the majority of the people who are not just doing their sport to do other parts of their lives, which show them as a full character and human being outside of just their sport. So you're great at this one thing, and you also like these other things. It shows you're human. It shows you're approachable. It shows like you're everybody else. And that's the thing that, from a marketing standpoint, is that connectivity. It's that connective tissue where you're being real. I can tell you my boys are 19 and 22. I call them boys, young men. They know like what's real and what's not, right? So from an advertising perspective, pay for play only goes so far. And granted, every opportunity is going to be paid, but if you're speaking from an authentic standpoint, then it's so much more meaningful from a marketing standpoint. So going back to the tip, I would say I encourage people to just show the other parts of themselves beyond sports. I can also tell you that I've had people say, well, as soon as I post things on social that are not my sport, I don't get as much engagement. And my response to that is that will change over time. And once you start showing that, you are your sport plus all of these different things, I think that's really meaningful. It's meaningful for you to show who you are, but from a marketing perspective, if you are trying to look for other opportunities, it shows this human essence that is the real thing that we're trying to get to, that makes it all marketable.
Yeah, Garen, do you think that maybe there's something that people should avoid whenever they're trying to post stuff?
Not really. I mean, it's like Michael was saying. I think that the more you are genuine and open, like the more like companies will get to know you. I think that during the time when I went through it, I was playing at my sport down there in Australia. We didn't have social media. Like, it just it makes me sound extremely old, but we didn't have social media. We didn't have an opportunity to do any form of like marketing like is around today, where our idea of getting a sponsor down there was kind of like having a contra deal, where someone would give you a pair of shoes, you wore the shoes, and you just had your photo taken in them every now and then, and whatever. That's essentially how we did a lot of sponsors down there. And it was like really just your top 5% were getting all the money when it came to marketing. And they had to do TV commercials and radio and things like that. So nowadays, there's a lot of ways of monetizing yourselves and stuff in the industry. And I think one of the things that this is probably a question for later, but one of the things that I find I'd really like people to have a look at is, if you do happen to get an opportunity and you do happen to get support from a company, look at reinvesting it back into your craft. Like, don't just put it into a car or things that really just lose value quickly. Because at the end of the day, like Michael was saying, if you're a football player and you've got a career span of around 2 years, like you got to monopolize on everything you potentially can in that period of time, because once your day is done, you're essentially, there's not a lot of things you can go from there. So what you want to be able to do is reinvest in yourself, make sure that you're healthy coming out and retiring and whatever it might be. But at the same time, with a lot of the skills and a lot of the opportunities that I think players are missing right now, is if someone was to give you X amount of dollars, you can guarantee that probably 90% of them will just go and spend it. That there's that other 10% would be people that have got smart people around them to say, hey, what are you going to do with that? Let's come up with a plan. And I think that the good thing about the Huckle system is, whilst there is no cap on what you can earn and no limit of what you can do, I think the good sense is that the education is there with the system to say, hey, if you're given X amount of dollars and you think that you have a conversation with your coach and he says that you need to be a little bit more alert on your feet, or improve your speed or your upper body strength or whatever, reinvest that money into finding someone or getting a trainer or doing something where that $5,000 could turn into $50,000, could turn into $100,000 because you've reinvested in yourself. And I think that's one of the big issues that's going to be surrounding that NIL system, where I think there's not a lot of guidance around that particular that new thing that's coming in, then there's going to become a problem. That's where I think the Huckle system has that already in check, and the guidance that is there up front. It's we don't want to harp on it too much, but it is ready made. It's perfect for what's going to happen.
Gotcha. Now, do you think, obviously, with Huckle's platform, we do have guidelines as the athletes being on there? We need to make X post on this app or this long of a post on this app. But as a generality for the athletes who are trying to increase their brand, is there certain platforms over certain, this platform is better than this one, or they should be posting longer videos on this compared to shorter videos on this?
It's one of those things where it's really a preference standpoint. I couldn't say, Pinterest works for some people, Instagram works for others, Facebook for others. It's really where your interest set is. I think the big answer to all of that is content. That's the one that the more content you put out. So TJ, you continually to doing podcasts, and you started at one, and now, many years later or months later, more and more are there. And when you look at your playlist, you've got all of these podcasts. That's the same thing with content. So if you do it one at a time and it's done meaningful and purposefully, then that's the thing that gets you there. It's really less about the platform. It's more about what you're actually putting out into the world for people to see.
Gotcha. And I know, and this is a little bit of an exposure of a talk that you and I have had. Obviously, a lot of people will post the best things of their life when it comes to social media. And you and I had talked about, I work overnight shift while trying to play both local rugby and travel rugby, playing under Garen's team that he owns with the Storm. We'll be traveling hopefully here in a few weeks, or not hopefully, we will be. I've purchased my tickets. So I'm worried about working a night shift, rotating sleep schedule, extremely high stress, running a business, running a podcast, working full time. And these are the things that you wanted me to share to show the more of the human side, because anyone can post their day at the beach. Anyone can post their PR and their best lift or a highlight of them playing rugby. But a lot of people don't post their failures or the struggles that they're going through, and everybody has them. And like you said earlier, it goes a long way of showing that there's more than just the sport.
100%.
You don't need to have just business.
Yep. And the fact that you're doing all of those things, right? If you were to see it on the other side of the lens, and we were to just see you as a rugby player, we'd say, okay, he's a great rugby player. That's great. But then we see that you're working the night shift. You're also doing a podcast. You're managing your sleep schedule, all of the stress. Like now it's like, wow, he can be that level of an athlete and do all of these other things that he has to do on a daily basis. That's incredible. So when you look at that type of thing, but I say that type of thing, when you look at it from that perspective, you see like the story is so much grander than you being an athlete. It is you being an athlete plus all of these things that it takes for you to be that athlete. And that's where I would say that you're right. If you're just posting, I mean, you see it all the time. If you're just posting all of these great things It's why people are in depression, because they think their life isn't great, only to find out that what they're viewing is fictitious in and of itself, right? They're only the great moments. Sure, they happen, but the rest of life isn't shown. The reality is the rest of life is there. So for me, where I say, particularly from the athlete perspective, is it's hard to be an athlete. It's hard to be an athlete to maintain the level of skill that you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And you're doing all of these other things. So if you can show that level of dedication, hard work, everything that it takes, that's the stuff that makes the real story.
I think in association with that too is like, for someone from the outside looking at what you've done, it shows so many different layers to your personality. So, and that's attractive to like a third party, because even from a coach perspective, or even as a player, if there is someone there that I know that they do so much work during the week, and they've got, like, we can dig down further into your story and say, okay, well, he's got a young family. He's trying to make ends meet. He's trying to do the right thing by his job and things like that. Come to the 79th minute of a match and you're still going. That says a lot about your attitude. So, and I can tell you now, like, during the time when I was playing, is that there are a lot of times where guys, like, I could just look at trainers, for example. They might have had all the best credentials in the world, but there was this one particular trainer I remember when I was going through with Parramatta, and his name was Rob Roland Smith. They called him the Sandhill Warrior. He used to run up and down Palm Beach in these budgie smugglers, like at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. He was just mad. But he obviously had all these qualifications, but he wasn't like a PhD fitness trainer. He was just a guy that got in there and did it. And it just resonated out of him. Like, everything that he did, he was able to push people and get the best out of them. Now, I'd rather stand in the defensive line with someone that's going to be doing the same thing, rather than someone that's been given something all his life. So, and that's what it's important to show in your profile, is that all these different layers that you've got in your character, because it just opens up you to a lot more opportunity, rather than just limit yourself and saying, I play X position in rugby. What else do you do? Do you like cars? Do you like, all those different type of things? This is why it's important for you to just really just open up.
Yeah, I think a great person who does this actually is on the Storm team and on your original team playing for USA is Kate. She's Captain Kate on Instagram. You see her bounce back from an injury. She's already back in the gym doing everything she can. She's balancing being a mother and relationship and doing all these things. And if I was to have a marketable item that I'm looking for, a smaller athlete, and by smaller I mean someone that not the top 5%, not your NFL players or NBA players, someone that can show the real life struggle and when this thing is helpful. I would 100% pick someone like her, or pick someone like Ty, who's working with trying to work with this job, trying to be a father, has played rugby at a very high level, and is trying to continue playing rugby at a very high level. The people that are posting all the stuff that they're going through, like I said, like Ty and Kate, I think that goes really far.
Well, certainly Kate. I mean, I can only talk on behalf of Kate, because I've had a little bit to do with her in the last couple of years with the women's rugby league. So, and she was one of the first ladies to contact me when we got started, and I think she was only 2 months out of giving birth, and she said she wanted to play. And it's like, what she put herself through, and like her work, her body, it's just phenomenal. And it's like, it's that type of thing where that's the story. Like, that's the inspiration that you want to pass on. And like, it took her a while to get to where she was, but it wasn't easy. And you could see it in every single post that she did. But where she is now, like, I still think she's one of the best players of women's rugby league in the United States. So,
Yeah, just like we've been talking about, and I'm sure Michael can attest, whenever you see, an athlete coming back from giving birth, and going and, going to such a high level of playing with she just played with, I think, she was selected to USA South, but couldn't play because she has like an MCL tear or meniscus tear. And, posting her story, that is what companies are wanting to see. That's the type of content that they want to see. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I think no, I think companies are going to want to see the story arc, right? They're going to want to see what happens. They may not adopt the story at some point as it's going along, but once they know what the story is and all of the hard work, then yes, they're going to look at that and say, here's somebody who went through all of this and is doing this. And it is, it's funny because I think we get caught up a lot of the time in like the successes and the wins and all of that. And the reality is it has those moments, and we all love those moments, and we want to strive and achieve those moments. And there's also all of these other moments, and those other moments are collectively what make life. And so those are the things that when you look at that and you say, I'm gonna show my entire journey. It's going to be my successes for sure. It's also going to be my failures. It's going to be my struggles. It's going to be all of the hard work. That whole thing, all of that is what is the essence. And those things are, everybody goes through it, right? It's just who's electing to share it. And that's the thing where we say, if you have the courage to share it, that's what's going to resonate with companies to really say, I want to work with you because you're real.
Gotcha. And I think you might have just covered what one of my final few questions are is, what would be a single actionable item for athletes to do either every day or a few times a week to help improve their brand?
It's like how yes, there is. I would say it's like how you train for your sport. So every single day you're training for your sport. Every single day you should be building your personal brand. And that can be in a number of ways. That can be social for sure, but it can also be on a local level. You're getting exposure. You're going out, you're talking, you're doing community service, whatever those things are that are important to you so that you're taking action on a daily basis. That in effect is building your personal brand. Now, if you were to go out and you were to do one speaking engagement and say, hey, I'm now a professional speaker, probably not. But if you go out and you do speaking engagements with frequency, you can get there, and or any other interest set that you have. And so that's where we look at it and say, yes, you do those small steps every single day, and then suddenly you wake up 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now, and look at how much you've achieved. I would say you do the same amount of work for your personal brand as you're doing, working out and for your sport training.
Gotcha. Garen, is there something you think, a single thing that people should be doing every day or every week?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it. And I think at the end of the day, just be yourself. Like it's hard for me, for example. I've been able to post every day. I'm just not used to that. Whereas it's natural for this generation. I used to think that the worst thing ever invented was a photo on a phone, and all those selfies. But look, for something like this, it's obviously it's an important part. Like there are so many things where I hate Twitter. People just want to just kind of voice an opinion. It's like I kind of stepped away from like a lot of that. I found myself trying to kind of getting involved in it too much, so I just kind of stepped back from it. But I do look at it. I do watch the things that people are doing. So things like what you guys are doing with your check-ins when you're doing your workouts and things like that. It's good from a coaching and an owner's perspective to see that these things are happening. And that would be the same from a brand. If a brand was working with you and they're following you on Instagram or whatever, and they're seeing you checking in and and doing your stuff in the gym, that's to them that's money. Because it's well spent, because they're profiling like their brand. So yeah, I would think that just think that when you're doing your profile and talking about what you're on about, it's not only you that it's helping, it's helping many people down the line. So.
Mm.
Gotcha. And I think it's a perfect timing for a shameless plug. Michael, how do you think Three Big Wheels and Huckle is perfectly tied to athlete branding and how they can help?
Yeah, thanks, DJ. That's a tee up right there. So first of all, we this has been a journey for me. I've done sports marketing for so long. I built Three Big Wheels because I just thought, I think there's so much more that athletes can get in terms of opportunity. And so from my heart of hearts, I built Three Big Wheels, and I'm like, I know I can do what I do in marketing for brands and building global companies, I can do on an individual basis for athletes. And that's a passion of mine. And that's why I started Three Big Wheels. I started Huckle because I was like, okay, this can be scalable. It doesn't have to be the professional level. It can be all of the levels that you mentioned before, TJ. In fact, we even work with retired athletes, so who are still marketable. And so my heart of hearts again for Huckle was to build it to help athletes. And now we've just launched beta. We've got a lot to do on the product. If you come on, we don't have a lot of bells and whistles, but we are starting. And companies are coming on, and they're spending money. And they're spending money with athletes from all different sports, all different levels. And this is just the start. And one of the things that we're going to be doing coming up is that education is going to be a very large part of what we're doing. So what does it mean to build your personal brand? And we're going to do a lot of content around that. From the company side, what does it mean to work with athletes? How do you choose the right athlete? What's a good return on investment for working with an athlete? So there's so many things that are like, we know that this is relatively new in terms of bringing this to mass market. And so because of that, we want to educate both sides. And again, the marketplace that we're building is a win for everybody. It's a win for the athlete. It's a win for the companies because they have access to markets they never had before. And that's what we're building. And it's a community based, and we're just getting started. So, my biggest thing for athletes in the conversations that I had is I cannot tell you how many times athletes have said, I never thought I was marketable. And all I would say is, I challenge you, if you're an athlete, to take a look at that. And as long as you're real that, there are varying levels of what marketability is, right? But if you understand that there are varying levels of marketability, there are opportunities out there, and Huckle can bring them to you, and that's what we're building.
Yeah, I think that is great. And we covered almost all of this, if not all of this, on this symposium that we held a few weeks ago in partnership with Huckle and Carolina Storm. Is there any symposiums in the future for anyone who may watch this on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify or Anchor for them to maybe get some more information?
Yeah, so I think that's great. So first of all, if you are looking for information, you can email us at info@huckleup.com. That's the best way to get in touch with us. We are super responsive on that. And I think the answer to that is, and Garen and I have had conversations around this, there's a lot of value in doing this. And I think we're just getting started. And what we want to do is we want to get the feedback from the athletes to say, okay, what are the things that we didn't touch on in that maybe we should be touching on? And then we'd like to be rolling this out in a format where, we've got broader audiences, more people can come and ask questions. We're putting this out there so that people can learn. And that again, going back to the educational content combined with the educational content that we're doing, that we're providing a forum and community of which athletes can learn and become informed. So we believe, and I know we're just getting started, but I think great question. We're very open to doing more. I certainly see many more on the horizon. And it's just a matter of, sort of the time and place, but we certainly anticipate those are coming.
And you got to imagine as well, like NIL is it's brand new. Like there's going to be a lot more questions asked, a lot more people interested in it. So if it can come about that these symposiums are, kind of like leading the way and being able to gain your knowledge and gain some insight into how you can kind of navigate your way through NIL. Certainly recommend like anyone, like just share it to any other player, any other athlete, doesn't matter what level they are.
Yeah, and of course, I share this to all my friends, everyone that's listening to the podcast has heard me talk about Huckle as I heard me talk about rugby. If you are listening, all of this info will be in the show notes. Huckle's website, their Instagram, Three Big Wheels, Isagenix, Rugby Department, Carolina Storm, they will all be in the show notes. So make sure you press the buttons below, email Michael, follow everyone on Instagram. I wanted to thank you both for coming on today and sharing the knowledge. And I really look forward to the future episodes we have with you guys.
Thanks for having me, TJ. It was a pleasure.
Thanks,
Yeah.
TJ.
Y'all have a good day.